think there's been a lot of cyber guides in times gone by, but typically they've fallen into two categories: either technical descriptions of the problem, or very often kind of technical frameworks as to how to solve the problem. And if cyber really is becoming the business challenge, which we all know it is, what we have is a whole part of businesses that haven't really had the experience or knowledge as to how to engage in this world. And so this book is really unique for me in two ways. One is it's aimed as an executive guide, help me get into the world of cyber, help me understand this technology space I've never seen before and really don't understand fully how it fits into the business challenges I face. But I think what makes it even more valuable is it's been written by their peers who've been through those experiences. So it's different from that kind of theory of how things should work and why they need to work. It really is a practitioner's guide and executive level as to how to function in the modern digital world. Well, interestingly, certainly the data protection regulation reform, which is one half of the two changes coming, is probably the most hotly contested bit of regulation that the EU has had, I think, ever. It's gone through thousands of different iterations. So I think in terms of readiness, there's a real want and a realization we need to change our thinking. For example, one of the things that I think has been pretty clearly evident in times gone by is it's very easy for regulation to be a distraction. We spend more time just trying to achieve the regulation, and you think the purpose of the regulation was actually to have good security to start with. I think what's also occurred is we have had the luxury of learning from global experience. So if I look at some of the regulations we've seen before, some of them have been very prescriptive, and what we learn from that is as soon as we document it, it's pretty well out of date, and regulation works very slow, cyber works very fast. So there's some lessons we've been able to learn that says let's build regulation that actually hopefully should have some longevity and is fit for purpose. And so some things in there is just leaving things like what is state of the art reasonably generic and putting the pressure back on those that have to adhere to it to keep pace, to understand. And so I think if I look on the flip side from an industry perspective, I think we get the rudimentary concepts. I think we understand why we need to do this, but I think in a good way it's challenging us to raise the bar in what we do and how we function. When we think of cybersecurity, I think we often think of the direct company. But very much in Europe, we are built up of supply chains, partnerships, ecosystems. And actually what happens is small companies now get caught in the crossfire of requirements of bigger, more mature organizations. So I do think there's a challenge there, which is company A might be a small, dedicated SMB that makes some very specific capability that maybe supplies into the defense industry. Now suddenly the bar on them is going to be raised because they're part of that bigger ecosystem. If I think kind of coming back to that broader industry space, I think there's two things in here. Firstly, we see different maturities. And the reason we see those different maturities is experience in threat. Financial services, for example, has had to deal very much predominantly with cybercrime for 2 decades and has so permanently been looking as to what are the new threats, what are the new capabilities, and how do I keep pace, how do I keep pace with that, and how do I find the balance point. If I look at maybe the retail industry, I think the retail industry has in the last couple of years started to suffer more of the sort of attacks that financial services have hit, but haven't got that legacy experience, haven't got that knowledge, haven't got the skills, and very often haven't got the same budget to invest. So I think both kind of legacy knowledge and experience and also their ability to apply those controls relevant historically to what's going to come in the future is changing. But what I should say, if I look at the regulation, the data protection regulation reform is very clear because it talks about regard for state-of-the-art relevant to your risk. So I think it still keeps that healthy balance of saying if you hold lots of information that's very important, then you need to be really close to state-of-the-art. If maybe you just hold a little bit of information and in much smaller volume, then you don't need to be so close. Critical national infrastructure, which is the other part of the regulation, the Network Information Security Directive, that really aims at the kind of the cream of the crop, those things that keep society functioning. But even in that space, there are different maturities. But now all of these will be expected to be at that state-of-the-art level and the supply chain that sits behind them.